Okay, we're going to jump into our focus lesson for lesson 3.2, and our I can statement today is to be able to zoom in to find decimals between decimals. And this should sound a little bit familiar as we zoomed in to find fractions between fractions. So the process is really the same thing here. Okay, just trying to dig into decimals a little bit deeper and understanding how they work here. So the activity here, we're supposed to try and find what this dot is. Okay, can we find the value of this dot? So I know it's between 6 and 7. So when I zoom in between 6 and 7, I'm just blowing it up. So 6 and 7 are enlarged. And I'm making the different ticks in between here. And we know the next column is 10 times smaller. So those 10 times smaller than the ones column would be tenths. And so I know I'm going to convert these into tenths. So this is 6. So this would be 6 and 1/10, 6 and 2/10, 6 and 3/10, 6 and 4/10, 6 and 5/10. So I know I'm on the right track. And then 6.6, 6.7. 6.8, 6.9, and then if I go 9/10 to 10/10, that gets me to 7. 10/10 would get me one more, and I'd bump up to 7. So I know I did it right. Notice when I zoomed in, I'm now to tenths, the next smallest column below the ones column in our number system. I now know I have to zoom in between 6 and 7/10 and 6 and 8/10. It's somewhere pretty close to 6.8. So if I zoom in between 6.7 and 6.8, I need to now go 10 times smaller. So I'm not in tenths anymore, I'm hundredths. And you'll notice when we're in hundredths, I can't get up to I'm in tenths. I can't get to 6.8. They all have to start with 6.7. So now, instead of going up by tenths like I did here, I'm going up 1/100th. So 6.71, 6.72. They all start with 6.7. Okay, and then I just add on another hundredth, and I keep going. 6.73, 6.74. 6.75 or 6 and 75 hundredths, so I know I'm on the right track. 6 and 76 hundredths, 6 and 77, and so on. 6 and 78 hundredths, 6 and 79 hundredths. And then if I get 9 of these, or one more would be 10 of these, bumps up to 6.8, so I know I did it right. So I know my my letter A is now between 6.78 and 6.79, so I'm going to zoom in between them. And like last time, I know everything has to start with 6.78. So now instead of going up by 100th every time, I'm going to go up by 1,000th. I've gone 10 times smaller. So this would be 6.781, 6.782, and it's these thousandths I'm going up by. But they all start with 6.78. 6.783, 6.784, 6.785, and so on. Off here, 6.787, 6.788, and 6.789. And then once I get 10 of these, so I go one more thousandth, I'm up to 6.79, and it jumps up another tenth up there. So, another hundredth. So I'm up to 6.79. And by doing this, I've located my dot. It's at 6.782, or 6 and 782 thousandths. Which it looked like it was close to 7. 6.75 is over 3/4 of the way. So 6.75 we know is 3/4 of the way. So we're really close to 7. So that makes sense. If I want to look at this number line and kind of estimate where these lines are, I know on number line 1, I know my answer is between 6 and 7 somewhere, closer to 7. On number line 2, I know my number is between 6.7 and 6.8. Okay, my number's between there. And if I zoomed in here, I now know it's between 6.78 and 6.79. And then when I get to the last one, I found the exact one. It's 6.782. So on each number line, how far apart are the ticks? And so we got to look at each number line individually there. But on the first number line, the ticks are 1 apart. Now I know I'm going by tenths. Every tick is 1/10 apart. And here I'm going by hundredths, so they're 1/100th apart. And on the last one then, 1/100th apart, they're 1/1000th apart here. And every time I get smaller, okay, 10 times smaller on those ticks that I'm jumping up. So man, if I've zoomed in, these are very small differences. Thousandths are very, very small. They look a little bigger because I've zoomed in to make it bigger, but they're very, very small pieces. Okay, so I could easily find now, guys, lots of numbers, infinite if I wanted to, of numbers between numbers. So between 6.7 and 6.8, when I zoomed in, look at all these numbers I found that fell between here. Remember the pattern here. If it's between 6.7 and 6.8, they all start with 6.7. And then I add another hundredth on, and they keep changing. If I zoom in again, now I'm adding a thousandth on every time. But these would all start with 6.78, then go up 1/1000th, another thousandth, and so on. And again, zooming in, I can keep finding numbers between numbers. Okay, so if I went down and tried if I looked a little further, then like we did last unit, I'm going to switch over to another screen here that won't have this stuff on here. Let me erase this real quick. But I can just do this now, understanding that if I want to find, like for example on question C, okay, down here, find three numbers between 6.7 and 6.8, okay? Again, between 6.7 and 6.8, if I'm looking up here, I don't even have to have it labeled. If I've learned that it's between 6.7 and 6.8, it has to start with 6.7. Just start with 6.7. So 6.71, 6.72, 6.73. We also talked about we could go 6.7, and as long as it starts with that, I don't have to put the ones that are here. It just has to start with 6.7 and can't go to 6.8. So I could have this. I could have 9s forever. 6.7, I'm still not to 6.8 yet. These are so small, they don't matter. I got to get 10 of these to give me one more of these before I get to 6.8. So again, there are infinite answers that work on this. All right, and we could have done that for this question too, and find a lot of things between numbers between numbers, because there are infinite numbers between numbers because they keep getting smaller and smaller.